Okay, hello and welcome everyone. This is Howard Jacobson, and today I'll be talking about the 7 hidden obstacles to success. And I want to make it clear from the outset that this is, for me, very personal work. And it's ongoing work. And in fact, one of the things that led me to do this webinar and to start bringing this work into my work is a realization that I don't have to have it all perfect and have it all nailed in order to speak to it. For me, this is all a process of self-development, of growing up, of maturing, and recognizing that that process never ends as long as I'm drawing breath. And so a lot of this is me talking to myself. In fact, I've been, for the last 2 hours, I've been working on the PowerPoint. Behind me, I have a whiteboard in which I'm scribbling new ideas. So I really appreciate everyone showing up today to give me the opportunity to put a lot of these thoughts into a framework, into a format. It's as useful for me as I hope it will be for you. So first I figured I should define success. Certainly success can involve making a lot of money or making enough money or making an impact. But I'm thinking about this photo that I couldn't find in time to scan into the presentation. It's a photo of my grandfather, who is a small, unassuming man. And he grew up in Vienna. He got married to my grandmother, I think in 1923. They had my mother, and then the Nazis came, and he was forced to flee. And in Vienna, he had been an accountant. I still remember when they're in their late 70s, early 80s, I'd go over to their house, and there'd be this box of pencils. And most of them were about 1.5 inches long at this point. They were all perfectly sharpened. And things that I would have thrown out long ago, he would save everything. And in fact, I went to college, to not an inexpensive college, based on the savings that he had made in his life. But then after the war came, he moved to Palestine and he sold things door to door. Then he moved to America and he worked in the Red Devil paint factory, and there's this, in the picture I'm picturing is him sort of standing there inside the factory. He's got a little office on the side of the factory floor, and clearly being an accountant and doing accounting for a paint company was not like this giant calling. He never made a ton of money. I don't think he loved it all that much, but he was able, through that money, to put me and my sister through school, to support his family, to have time to do the things he loved, which was taking long walks with his wife, holding hands. And so when I think about success and I think about entrepreneurial definitions and coaching definitions of success, I want to make sure that definition includes my grandfather, who just did his job and yet managed to lead a really full and adventurous and fulfilling life. He, to a large extent, fulfilled who he was despite some really terrible circumstances. He spent a year in concentration camps. He lost an eye. He was separated from his family. He didn't know if he'd ever see them again. And so I want to make sure that when we're talking about success, we're talking about something bigger than business, than just making money. So for me, it's discovering who you are, why you're here, what talents you will use, how you're going to use them, and then doing it. Now for me, in my life, success would not be working as an accountant in a Red Devil paint plant. For me, success includes doing my own business and making abundant money while doing it. That's part of my definition. It's part of the things I want to accomplish. Involve, steering my own ship and and making money that allows me to do a bunch of things with it in this world. So I want to talk about a couple of illusions that I believe, mostly liberated myself from, but in a large extent, this presentation is me talking to myself in like 2000, 2002, 2004, 2007, 2009, last year, last week. And so these are things I'm really very personally familiar with. So the first illusion is that just knowing enough is enough. And this is an illusion that has a very strong marketplace appeal because the easiest thing for me to sell to you is more knowledge. How to know how to do something. Buy a book on Google AdWords, 408 pages, then that's the missing piece. Of course, I only get $1 when I sell you that book, so I got to sell you more stuff. Right? So if you just take the right course, I can't tell you how many courses I've bought. Binders for $500, 3 binders for $1,500, seminars for $4,500. And I'm not saying that any of those were not useful, but as the go-to solution, that leaves a lot to be desired. So we just, master the right skills, buy the right tools, and there's some magic formula that we need to discover. And this is so appealing because it's the easiest thing, it's the easiest hole to fill. So there's a second illusion. So after we go and we spend a lot of money on learning, and we spend a lot of time on learning, and we still don't get the success we're looking for, then we get sold the second illusion, which is that there's something, if it doesn't work, there's something wrong with our head. We need to be motivated. We need motivation. We need not to be lazy. We need to think positive thoughts and attract success. And so then we start, well, what's wrong with me? I have all this information. I spend all this money. I have all these skills, and yet I still am not making it. So then it becomes, this sort of bootstrapping thing about there's something wrong with our head. So if it's not our knowledge and it's not our attitude, then we're fasteriskakta, right? So what do we do at this point? We can just, what happens is that you see the same sort of, and I have experienced the same sort of yo-yo dieting that people experience when they're trying to lose weight and they can't lose weight. I've experienced that in terms of, I got to buy another course, I got to get another coach, I got to do another thing, I've got to read psycho-cybernetics and practice that, I've got to write 21 days worth of affirmations, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, and then it doesn't work, or it works for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and then it falls away again, and I end up feeling worse. And so it really is a treadmill, because giving up is unacceptable, and yet, so it's this constant ebbing and flowing of hope and despair. So, are we destined to struggle, to work too hard for too little reward on stuff that doesn't excite us, always being tempted and tantalized by the next course or program or self-help book that just reinforces this pattern of hope and disappointment? I believe there are ways out of the trap. And you know what? I shouldn't have said I believe, because I know for myself there have been ways out of the trap. And just basically, it's about a correct diagnosis and knowing that you're not broken and there's no predestination about this, and a correct prescription. So if you go to the doctor, I've had tennis elbow ever since the summer. I dug a lot of big holes in my backyard and side yard and front yard and community garden. And our soil is, after about the first 2 inches of topsoil, it's all clay. And I just worked too hard and I injured my arm. And so I'm doing all this stuff, but it's not affecting, it's not doing anything. So yesterday I finally went to the chiropractor, and she worked on a whole bunch of adhesions between my elbow and my wrist. And these were things that were stuck in such a way that I had no way to do it myself. So without the, I was putting on the band, the wristband, the elbow guard. What else was I doing? I was doing stretching exercises. I was doing little weights. Nothing was going to get to what was really the issue. So the correct diagnosis and the correct prescription can help a lot of stuff just fall away. So I'm going to talk about the 7 obstacles that I have seen, that I've experienced, and I'm sure there's many more than 7 for me. These are the ones that appear to be most serious and most common. At this point in my career, I've been teaching people skills, probably since I was 22 and I started teaching in school. I taught PE, I taught science, I taught drama, juggling, clowning, reading, writing, thinking, science, and then got into the business world and taught and did coaching on effectiveness, and I got into marketing. And so I teach how to do online marketing, how to write sales letters, how to write copy, how to do ads, how to do AdWords. And something that you notice when you start teaching people how to do things is that they could know how to do them and they still don't do them. So I've expanded my repertoire to be more helpful, and as a result, I have what I think is a broad range of experience in these obstacles and how they manifest and what the root cause is and some steps to overcome them. So yes, it includes knowledge and attitude, but it goes far beyond. So as I go through this presentation, I invite you to see how any of these have played out in your experience and if they're worth tackling. And what would be great is if you could either chat or Q&A any of your reactions, and I can just see them and maybe read them anonymously for each one, just to get a sense of, for the folks on this call, does this one resonate? Do you understand what I'm talking about? If you don't understand what I'm talking about here, that's probably good. That means you're not, you haven't hit this particular obstacle. So we begin with a correct diagnosis, and so I put together a pyramid. And the pyramid is the anatomy of achievement, and I start at the very bottom. So I'll just go through it bit by bit. So if you want to achieve anything, whether it's learning how to dance, planting a seed and growing it to a plant, building a business, running an ad, whatever it is, first of all, if you want to accomplish it, it has to be doable. If the bottom level is it can be done, it's possible, it's doable. If that's not the case, then nothing else is going to matter. The next level is you believe it can be done. And I don't mean a kind of forced belief or affirmations. I mean, basically, we act into the future that we think is going to happen. And so if we have an unexamined future or a default future that looks like, well, more of the same, it's like those 2 guys from that old Saturday Night Live sketch where they're sitting on the couch having all these great ideas, and then at the end they go, that's another thing we're never going to do. So if we don't believe it can be done, if we don't believe that the future is for us, if there's some other more likely future, we're not going to put ourselves into it. We're not going to consistently take the actions. The next one is knowing what to do, and that's what we already talked about. That's where that's our go-to, right? The quick fix. I'll get more information, more knowledge. But obviously, we don't know what to do. We can't do it. The next level up is once we know what to do, we have to be able to do it. There's a big difference between knowledge and know-how, capability. So we have to develop capabilities. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be world-class. It simply has to be sufficient. Then we need to be able to access that capability. And for me, this is one of the biggest sticking points for me and for other people is, yeah, I can do it. If you put a gun to my head and told me to do it, I would do it on command, but I can't seem to get myself to just do it. Do it on a regular basis, do it all the time, you know, do it when it needs doing, do it until it's done. That somehow there is some sort of invisible force field that's separating me from my capabilities. Okay, so now let's say the next one up is I want to do it. So, and this is the second sort of red herring. They say, well, if I can't do it, then I just obviously don't want it enough. Well, I find most people really want to do the things that are going to lead to achievement, but focusing there doesn't give a lot of leverage. And the top one is awareness or self-regulation or interaction with environment, because nothing we ever plan goes exactly the way we plan it. So to be able to correct course consistently, to be aware, or another word is to be present or to be awake, so that as we interact with our environment, we actually change our plans, change our strategies, so that we keep moving towards the achievement that we're trying to get to, or we may decide that we want a different achievement. But in any case, without that capability of consistently reevaluating and taking the next step, wherever we are, there's always a next step, then we're not going to get there. We may get somewhere else, but we won't get necessarily to where we want to go. So I'm going to talk about the 7 obstacles, each based on a different level of this pyramid. The first obstacle is what I call an unecological business model. And that, if it can't be done, then we have no business doing it. So I love the fact that economics and ecology come from the same root, eco, which is Greek for home. And basically, ecology is how creatures, how organisms make a living. It's how they get what they need. It's how they attain the resources they need, how they reproduce, how they share resources. And economics is simply how one particular species does that, us. But economics is really a subset of ecology, and all the rules of ecology apply to economics. So, you know, is there a market? Is really the same thing as are there organisms out there who can provide us with what we need, and in exchange, can we provide them with what they need? Right? Is that, you know, what does the competition look like? Is the competition something that's so overwhelming that we could never break into that niche, or does the competition force us to redefine ourselves in a particular niche? So if you're trying to plant corn in a forest, and there's not enough light because the trees are taking up all the sunlight, there's too much competition for light, then you wouldn't plant corn there. Similarly, are there enough resources? Do you have enough resources? So a maple tree generally needs shade to grow for the first few years, because if it couldn't do its shade, most maple trees land under larger maple trees. So if they needed sunlight to grow from the beginning, they would never grow. So are you trying to create something that requires resources that you don't have, that simply are not available to you in your environment? And periodicity just means, trend seasonality. I don't try to grow pretty much anything here in the winter. I do some sprouting inside. I have some greens that are hanging on. But are there times where things need to rest? Are there better times or worse times? So using nature as kind of a guide and an inspiration and an instruction manual to think about your business in terms of ecology, in terms of a niche. And niche simply means, where you find yourself operating. And niche determines function. So, every plant in its niche, it needs a certain leaf structure. It may need leaves that are very succulent, that can hold water, like an aloe. It might need leaves that are very large because there's so much competition for sunlight. It may need a trunk that grows very quickly so that it can outcompete other species around it for sunlight. It may need a very, very deep root system to draw up nutrients that other plants can't reach. So the niche determines the needs of the organism are determined, or the strategies that it used to meet its needs are determined by what's around it. And the function then determines the structure. So what it needs determines what it ends up looking like. And that's true of human businesses as it is of plants and animals and fungi and bacteria and everything else. Nature is defined by a ruthlessly efficient resource flow. And it's a wonderful paradox that scarcity in nature, because resources are at such a premium, there's no waste. Right? We throw out garbage. When was the last time you saw nature wasting anything? A big pile of nature just sitting there with nothing to do. Right? You see a deer dead by the side of the road. In 3 days, it's been eaten down to a carcass. Everything degrades, everything decomposes, everything goes back to the cycle. Nature is ruthlessly efficient. And so the scarcity of resources leads to nature's incredible abundance. And evolution in nature is, we used to think it was, survival of the fittest. You compete by destroying your competitors. It's actually the opposite, that evolution is the most cooperative. Organisms survive and thrive are the ones that enrich their environment the most while still meeting their own needs. So there's that double thing. They've got to meet their own needs, but the more they contribute to their ecosystem, the more likely they are to survive. A bear that doesn't shit in the woods, doesn't return nutrients to the soil, doesn't go down to the river, get the salmon, eat it, and bring all that nitrogen back up and fertilize the woods, doesn't have woods for very long. So these are all ways in which our own endeavors can be informed and inspired by nature. So we make sure we have ecological business models. Obstacle number 2, the future we really believe in. So that's number 2, believe I can do it. So if we really believe in a future that doesn't include the achievement of what we're trying to achieve, then we're not going to achieve it. I think of it as destiny. The destiny that we implant in our heads, or that someone else implanted in our heads and we've never examined and replaced, is a magnet. We always act in accordance with what we truly expect. If we have a dominant voice in our head that says nothing's ever going to change, and we believe it, then nothing will. So the future that we believe in is going to filter all of our actions. The actions that we take that are not in accordance with that future, so even though I want to be a billionaire, if I don't believe it's going to happen, I'm simply not going to take the actions that could get me to be a billionaire. I'm not going to take the risks. I'm not going to think in that way. Even if I want to, even if I read books about it, even if I get coaching on it, fundamentally, if I don't believe it's likely to happen, I'm simply not going to act in that way. And this is different from positive thinking, very different from positive thinking, because affirmations simply affirm how much we really don't believe. So we say, I am happy and abundant, I am happy and abundant, I am happy and abundant. And we repeat this, and we repeat this, and our brain is not fooled. Right? Let's try this. My desk is made of wood, my desk is made of wood, my desk is made of wood. I do not need to affirm that my desk is made of wood because my desk is made of wood. So what we're talking about is not positive thinking and affirmations that just get our bullshit detectors up. What we need is a realistic vision of the possible. And so the first thing to do is to acknowledge the content of the current future in order to rewrite it. So the current future is what we currently believe in, and very often, if we're not aware of it, we don't realize that it's completely irrational, and actually, if we thought about it, it wouldn't make much sense. That's not really the most likely thing from a rational perspective, but of course it becomes self-fulfilling if we hold that as our default future, our current future. So, moving up the pyramid, and I'm checking, I'm keeping an eye on comments. A wonderful one from Tim saying that being an entrepreneur means coming to face with oneself continually, a self-forced march to self-awareness. Yes, beautiful. So this is, by being entrepreneurs, by saying we are taking responsibility, we're taking the wheel on this journey, we're going to hit all our stuff, aren't we? And we get to play a game called self-development, and as entrepreneurs, it becomes a game because we get we get scored. We can see what the score is. We can see the score in terms of how close we are to living our dream life. We can see our score in terms of how much money we're making, how many people we're positively impacting. So yeah, that's what it is. Catherine said she dumped her affirmations notebook in the trash a couple of years ago. Now I am successful. Right on. And I'm not saying that affirmations that they don't have a place. But when they become a substitute for reality-based thinking, I think they can simply reinforce the thing that they're trying to counter. All right, so red herring number one, lack of knowledge. So know what to do. So this is not one of my 7. This is as I said, the go-to, the first place we go in our reductionist thinking. That all I need to do is implant more knowledge, because it's the easiest to fix. Just take another seminar, buy another course, read another book. It's even easy to fix when we don't have any money. Right? We can go to the public library. We can go online and read people's blogs. There is no shortage of information. So back to our regularly scheduled obstacles. So obstacle number 3, insufficient know-how. And so we need the capability to do what we know how to do. So know-how is different from knowledge. And I was thinking about this a couple days ago. A friend of mine came over and we were playing, I'm supposed to say table tennis, not ping pong. We were playing table tennis, and my previously mentioned tennis elbow was acting up in my dominant hand, my left hand. And so I tried to switch to my right, and of course, my body knows how to play table tennis. I've been playing it since I was 6 years old. I know how to hold the paddle. I know how to angle it. I know how to do spin. I know how to turn on my heels for the forehand. I know how to cut the underspin. And of course, I was much worse righty than lefty. So the same knowledge did not translate into know-how. And the difference is experience, which can lead to differing depths of neural pathways. This is not about information. This is about cutting brain grooves for capability. And we get this through what Daniel Coyle, who wrote the Talent Code, calls deep practice. And this is a fantastic book, and it's been very, very helpful to me in many, many ways. And the 3 elements of deep practice that he identifies are chunk it up, repeat it, and learn to feel it. So for example, with juggling, I used to be a juggling instructor. I would try to teach people how to juggle, and I would say, here's the 3 balls, and just throw them out, and people would get very, very frustrated. Then I read a book by Michael Gelb called Body Learning about basically how the body learns things, and it totally changed the way I taught juggling based on the idea of chunking. So the first thing I do is no props. So no balls, no pins, no bean bags, no scarves, nothing. Just the motion. Because if people don't get the motion right, people tend to throw the ball up from the side of their body, and that way if both hands are throwing it from the side, a good throw means they're going to collide in midair. So you release from the belly button and you catch on the outside, so you get a cascade effect like a fountain. So the water's coming up the middle and spouting out to the sides. So unless you chunk it down simply to that motion, and when people are comfortable with that motion, you give them one ball, and you don't tell them to catch it, you just tell them to throw it and let it land on the ground. And when it lands on the ground, what they get is feedback without too much brain overwhelm. Then when they can do one ball, you give them multiple balls. Throw 2 at a time and let them land. Throw 3 at a time, 1, 2, 3, and let them land at your feet. Only then do I have them start catching. So you're always building on a solid foundation. Because we're just doing the throwing and we're watching it land, we're getting useful feedback. I used to teach people, and everyone wants to succeed, so I'd throw the ball, and people would do crazy stuff. They'd leap and catch it in the air, and they were getting positive feedback for bad throws. So you want to make sure that the feedback loop is accurate. So how about selling? Here's how you chunk it up or chunk it down. Here's some different selling skills. You got to ask need-eliciting questions, asking clarifying questions, questions to build desire, how to describe the product, how to respond to objections, how to ask for the next step. There's many more, but these are all specific chunks in the selling process. So then repeating it. Just keep doing it. Maybe do 50 calls in which you don't try to sell anything. You just doing market research, talking to people about what they need eliciting questions. So there's no pressure to close or make your quota, so you can focus on feedback. And then when you do that, you learn as you're going to feel it, to internalize the physical sensations of having asked a useful question. You can observe the positive response from your prospect. You can observe what it feels like to get the response you're looking for, information. And that positive feedback loop builds the talent. So know-how as opposed to knowledge. Now, obstacle number 4. A distorted relationship with time. And this is the area, able to access the capability. There's actually, I have several obstacles in this rung of the pyramid. So one is a distorted relationship with time. So I wonder why we have a distorted relationship with time. Which one of these is true? George Clason in The Richest Man in Babylon says, "As for time, all men have it in abundance." Peter Drucker, the guru of modern business management and the effective executive, says time is the scarcest resource, and unless it is managed, nothing else can be managed. So which is it? Is time the scarcest resource, or is it the most abundant? And I find that I have to hold on to both simultaneously, which means that that's the paradox. So what I think he means when Peter Drucker says it's the scarcest, it's the only one that isn't replenishable. It's the only one that you can't, I run out of money, I can always get more money. It's the only, and in fact, it's not scarce. It's not, it is what it is. It's possible to live in time abundance, but unless we treat it as a scarcest resource, we're not going to experience its abundance. In the same way as we learned from nature, that scarcity actually leads to abundance. The feeling that time is scarce, we can use that to create a feeling of time abundance. So here's some ways to tell if you're in distorted relationship with time. So I'll keep an eye on the chat to see if any of these ring true. So one of them is, okay, I'm busy, I'm always busy, but I'm not getting the important things done. I frequently feel like I'm stressed, I'm rushing. So this one was mine, and this is my default that I'm challenging myself to solve. For many years, and I didn't realize this, but I was always 5 minutes late. Like wherever I was always rushing. I'm in the canned goods aisle in the supermarket. I'm already thinking ahead to the grains and the bean, and the dried goods aisle. When I'm there, I'm already thinking about getting my wallet out for the checkout. So understanding that where I am is where I need to be has been a tremendous challenge for me throughout my life. And those of you who've been on calls with me, that I'm in courses and webinars and have talked to me, I think may have sensed that I'm always rushing because I have this fear that people are bored or they're waiting for the good stuff, and so it's a kind of a feeling of always sort of holding my breath and rushing ahead to the next thing, and never being here or never being now. Next one is not being present to what we're doing, and the term that I love for this is email voice. And I get this from Edward Hallowell, who wrote a book called Crazy Busy. And he talks about email voice. And email voice if you've ever been on the phone with someone and they're like, and you get the sense that while they're talking to you, they're also checking their email. So it's not just multitasking, it's a lack of presence. I would have this on like conference calls with 6 or 8 people, and I'd be, oh, here comes, I see an email come in, and let me just handle that now. And then someone says, what do you think, Howard? I'm like, okay, I could either cop to not paying attention, or I could try to dance my way out of it. And I got really good at dancing my way out of it. I say, well, there's a lot of ways to look at this. Or I'd say, could you repeat the last thing? There was a buzz on the line. And I would just bullshit my way, and I don't know if I was fooling anyone. I don't know if everybody else does this too. But what it meant was I was absolutely not being effective in the moment with anything. Next one is being late because we try to cram too much stuff in. So I love this one. I was 5 minutes late to my chiropractor yesterday because I kept on doing more things, and I was just underestimating how long it would take me. If every light had been green and there had been not another car on the road, I would have been on time. But I didn't build in that buffer because I'm trying to do too much at home. A common time distortion is procrastinating the challenging stuff, putting it off, and that's certainly related to other things. But we know we're in distortion with time when, again, we're not getting the important things done. And one of the best ways to not get things done is to be very busy. How about this one? Worshiping productivity tools. So that, okay, here's a new app to help me manage my to-do list. Here's a new system that allows me to do David Allen's Getting Things Done. Here, I'll try OmniFocus today. I'll try Things. I'll try AnyDo. I love tools. But I found that trying to optimize the perfect productivity tool as opposed to just taking one and just sticking with it is actually a form of procrastination. It's a form of keeping busy as opposed to, it's elevating the means to an end unto themselves. And another one is, a feature of our modern life. Edward Hallowell calls this one screen sucked. This is a very popular word in my household. Are you screen sucked? Because there's something about screens that emit light has nothing to do with the content that our brains are wired to pay attention to. And it may be that that even though we can't see them flickering, they're flickering, or the frequency of the light. It's like our brains are always looking, or have our eyes always looking for danger, for something that's changed, for movement. That's just a survival mechanism. And a screen is basically 24/7 that sort of thing. That's why screens can be so addictive. I discovered this. I suspected it for a long time, but I discovered it in 1987. My first teaching job. I thought I was the world's best teacher. I thought I was just so fascinating, and yet the kids would always get excited. These were 8th graders. They would always get so excited when I wheeled in the TV VCR cart. Like, that really bothered me. Here I am, I'm killing myself coming up with creative stuff, and yet I'd play some boring movie, and they would get more excited about the movie. So I tried an experiment. I went into the AV room, and I got a video camera, and I videotaped myself for 20 minutes reading from the textbook, which everybody hated. We all hated the textbook. And I would read from it, and I would show them the pictures, and I would read from it, and I wheeled it in, and they all got excited, and I put it on, and I sat down at my desk, and I expected them all to get the joke after about 15 seconds. And you know what? They watched it for 10 minutes. I had to turn it off. They didn't ask me to turn it off. So the fact that we spend so much time in front of screens actually distorts our relationship with time. It's a cause of the distortion, as well as an effect. So the first step is awareness of how we treat time, whether we treat it as abundant or scarce, and when we treat it as each. I use a free service called toggle.com, and I try to, I do this for billing and for just general knowledge, but if you track your time for a week, you'll start noticing your default choices. The other thing that I noticed that I wasn't expecting was I would tally up how much of my time I tallied, and I would get 3.5 hours a day. What happened to the other 5? I couldn't even track them. I didn't even know where they went, or I wasn't aware enough of where they had gone to be able to track them. So you'll see what you do, and you'll see how much you can't even account for. Second step is imposing a navigation system. And this comes from my friend Peter Bregman's book, 18 Minutes. And he's basically 5 minutes in the morning, plan your day. This is, if you haven't bought the book, it's a great book, but this is it. These 3 bullet points are it. 5 minutes in the morning to plan your day. 1 minute pause every hour. He has a watch that beeps at the top of the hour, and then he stops what he's doing, takes some deep breaths, and says, did I spend the last hour in a way that I value? And what am I going to do for the next hour? Simply a pause, and then 5 minutes in the afternoon, anything I need to complete, anyone I need to reach out to, any thank yous I need to give. How did the day go? And that's it. And I think of this as a keystone habit. Where you start doing this, then a lot of other time-related issues simply fall away based on the awareness. And pausing for 1 minute every hour is not like a big thing to do. This next weekend, I'm going up to Kripalu, and he and I are going to be teaching a workshop on his 18 minutes process on find your focus, master distraction, and get the right things done. And I find this more powerful than any of the other time management tools I've ever done, simply because it's about awareness. As Tim wrote earlier, this is about self-awareness. So, moving up, almost done. Obstacle number 5, the loyal soldier still in the field. And this is actually the obstacle that I almost didn't put in because I felt insecure about sharing it, which is really interesting because that's very ironic and self-referential. So I would love to see in chat your thoughts on this. So it's the next one that prevents our ability to access our own capabilities. So the loyal soldier. This term I got from a book called Nature and the Human Soul by Bill Plotkin. And the loyal soldier is based on these World War II Japanese soldiers who got stranded in jungles and remote islands, and when they were discovered 30 years later in the in the late 60s, early 70s. They didn't realize the war was over. They were still fighting. They were still fighting, and they couldn't believe at first when they were told that Japan had been defeated. And Plotkin writes about the way they were. Well, I'll get to that in a second. But the point is, they're still fighting to fulfill their mission. They're still trying to keep us safe. And we installed them as children. We live in a society that is not very nurturing to our souls, to our journeys. Even if we had the world's best parents, we still had to develop these loyal soldier mechanisms in school, in church, in community, because our society is about the ego. It's not about the spirit. And so we end up doing these things, developing these strategies that get turned into parts of us that persist. And they fight us to keep us safe. And the way they keep us safe is to keep us quiet, to keep us invisible, or to give us a mask so that nobody can see the real us. The poet David White puts it like this: if you only stop singing, I'll make you safe. So some common symptoms of an overactive loyal soldier still fighting is self-criticism. A codependent helping style. We're always trying to help other people. We're bending over backwards at the expense of our own needs. This reminds me of me for many years, that really struggling in my business, and yet always happy to spend 2 hours, just chatting with someone, and then they're never going to become a client, but I'm always giving them free advice, and that was really, it felt like noble and generous and good. What it actually was me dancing for approval. Another one is perfectionism, where the only way I'm okay is if I'm perfect. And of course, perfect doesn't exist, and so it keeps us from accessing our capabilities, because why bother? And emotional suppression, where we're putting on a stoic mask, a stoic face. And of course, emotional suppression in ourselves means that we can't read the emotions of others. And if you're going to do any sort of marketing, marketing is an emotion-based game. If you are unable to feel your own emotions, you're never going to feel real empathy for your prospects and clients. You're simply going to intellectualize it. And I was in the shower this morning. I jumped out and got my Evernote and recorded this thing. I think that's why marketing feels so hard, because it feels so unnatural, right? Again, back to nature. Everything in nature markets perfectly. The flower markets itself to the bee. The butterfly markets itself to the bird that eats the butterfly. Everything is putting out signals saying, here's what I got and here's what I need, and it works effortlessly. It's only us humans who don't have, we've covered up our emotional senses, and therefore we have to really work hard to say things that are going to bring other people, to attract them. All right, and personas. The word persona is Greek for mask. It was, when you were an actor in the Greek theater, you took on an archetypal role and you put on the mask to show who you were. And of course, persona, then the tragedy and the danger is that we forget that it's a mask, we think it's us, and it becomes personality. So each strategy serves to keep us less visible and less impactful because it's safer. It includes self-imposed limits on behavior, where we downsize the self, as Bill Plotkin says, and we become addicted to approval rather than fulfillment. So I can see in my own business how my addiction to approval rather than fulfillment made me do a lot of things on other people's agenda. It's like I outsourced the CEO role in my own life to a bunch of people who I didn't even know, who didn't even care about me. Someone would write me a nasty email, some stranger from my list, and I would go into I'd basically like be playing Twister with myself, trying to make them happy. So typical outcomes of a loyal soldier still in the field is that we can't access our own will. So we have the capability, and yet we don't seem to be able to do it. So it feels like this force field. We're thwarted by forces we can't see or explain. There's no momentum to our achievement, and we're settling for less than we can be. So the response here is a redeployment letter, and it's based on what Bill Plotkin discovered, how the Japanese welcomed home their loyal soldiers. And he contrasted it with the way America welcomed home its Vietnam soldiers. So you can think about it, that soldiers out in the field for 30 years fighting this, that's pretty ridiculous. You could look at them and really say, what are you, nuts, stupid? Well, of course, the Japanese society didn't do that. It welcomed them home with honor. It thanked them. And it gave them a voice, it gave them a place. So the 6 steps here is, first we have to determine that the war is over. We have to know that we are an adult, and we have the resources as an adult to take care of ourselves. Then we identify the strategies that our loyal soldier uses to keep us quiet, to keep us from singing, to keep us from accessing our capabilities. It's helpful to write them out. Here's what it looks like. Here's a recent example of how so for me, it was almost not including this because it felt very personal and maybe embarrassing, and maybe this is too woo-woo, and people would drop off the call and say, he's nuts. So that I can feel as a vestigial loyal soldier saying, just keep it safe, little Howie. Next thing is to welcome them home as a hero. Say, boy, I really get how you kept me safe when I was young. How without you, things would have been much worse. I might not even be here. I certainly wouldn't be as whole as I am if it hadn't been for you in those early years. And I really want to thank you, part 4. Thank you for your service. Now, part 5 and 6 are the most important parts. To really tell them the war is over, and don't just tell them, but prove it. Show examples of where they're actually doing the opposite of what they're trying to do. You're no longer being kept safe, you're being kept in a cage. You're being inauthentic. You're not being real. And then to redeploy. What is a new role? If my loyal soldier is always trying to keep me from looking like an idiot, looking like a fool, can you, loyal soldier, redeploy and always be checking to make sure that I haven't forgotten anything before I go and teach something? Could you make sure that I have batteries for my PowerPoint remote? Could you make sure, because I don't like to do that kind of detail stuff. I could easily show up for a course in my underwear. Sort of absent-minded professor. But can my loyal soldier take over those functions to keep me from looking like an idiot without then trying to keep me small in other ways? So obstacle number 6, the third one in this rung, the ability to access the capability, a disempowering present metaphor. So metaphors rule our lives. When we were little babies, we couldn't use words, we just had our body feelings, and those body feelings were translated into images for us if we were sighted. If not, they were translated into sounds. But I'll base the idea that most people are sighted and use images. And we operate based on those images. Not the words, but the images are primary and the words come out of them. And unless we become aware of our images, we can't change them. And once we change them, we start operating differently. And so we can do metaphor archaeology, and we can see what's my metaphor for business. There's struggle and heavy weight are both about business is something that I'm carrying around, or struggle is like business is actually an opposing force. I'm struggling in my business, there's something that I'm tussling with. There's something with its own will outside of my control. Or if my business is a heavy weight, then it's an inert thing that I have to lug. It can't, think about the difference between my business is a heavy weight or my business is a bicycle. All right, it carries me, or a sports car. I'm trapped and stuck. Could be very similar. Where now the metaphor is, it's a journey that I'm not moving from. That I'm, it's about movement, and I can't because I'm ensnared by something. It could be quicksand. It could be a cage. So, one of my business metaphors is I'm trying to run my business, but all I'm riding on is one of these big wheels. Those old little plastic trikes. Like I'm on the highway and I'm trying to run my business like a professional, and I'm in a big wheel, and everyone else around me is in these semis, and and I'm basically ducking and pedaling as hard as I can. And the big wheel was fun when I was a kid, but I'm a grown-up and I'm still acting like a kid in my business, and because the metaphor was the big wheel. So the way to excavate, to do metaphor or archaeology, so that you can figure out what it is and write a new present metaphor, is to listen for it. Tell a story. What's your life? What's the business life? What's your life like right now? And tell the story. Like, what are a couple of things that are true? Well, I'm really trying to move things forward. Okay, so move things forward has metaphorical qualities to it. And then try to visualize and just let an image pop into your head. I got this from a coach named Martha Tilliard, who did this process with me, and it was extremely, extremely enlightening and helpful. Try to, don't try to visualize it intellectually, but just describe what the situation is, what it feels like, and let a metaphor pop into your head, and feel yourself in the scene. And once the metaphor pops into your head, move into it and see it like a movie, and then feel the emotions of being in that movie. And then see, does this feel real? And then the next step is to picture the resolved future. How are things different in the future? What does that feel like? And then again, let an image arise. So before it was a big wheel, maybe now it's a recumbent bicycle. Or I'm now on water and I'm in a kayak, a really fast sea kayak. Or I'm hiking a mountain trail, and every step is beauty. And then to see if you can morph the current metaphor into the future one. However you want to do that, there's lots of NLP techniques for that, or just simply let one dissolve into the other, or simply say, I choose this new one. And that will inform the structure. Remember, this isn't about is not the same as with the future I believe in, but this is a current structure that is actually informing what future is possible. All right, now we've moved up. We're almost at the end. Want to do it. So obviously, if you want to do something, you got to want to do it. And this is red herring number 2, the idea of lack of motivation. So how many times have I heard this? You've got to want it. And that assumes that desire is not natural. And this can be useful for in rare circumstances where we need some short-term manipulation. Like I really need to get myself amped up to like the first minute of my run in the morning. I sometimes do this. You really want it. I want it. No, I want to go back to bed. But I know that after the first minute, I'll be much happier running, even though it's freezing and I'm aching and tired. So, it can be very useful as booster fuel, but it can't take you all the way to the moon. Because we don't need to be motivated to go for things we truly want. Like, I don't need motivation to go to the freezer and pull out some delicious frozen dessert. It's not like, come on, you can do it. You've got to want this. It's like, I find myself with the spoon in my mouth and I didn't even realize it. Like, That's how powerful motivation, natural motivation is. So that takes us to obstacle number 7, which is, so once we recognize all these obstacles and we want to do something about it, we have faulty ideas about change that we deploy, and those faulty ideas just can play into, if they aren't effective, if they're not ecological, they can play right into our disempowered future. They can just reinforce that things don't work, things aren't going to work, we don't deserve it, we can't have it. And they're all a form of not honoring our true nature. And I've listed 3 here. I'm sure there's many more. One of them is relying on willpower. Another is swinging for the fences, just trying to accomplish, everything all at once. And the other is a one-size-fits-all approach. So willpower is a limited resource. A wonderful study. I can't remember what book I read this in. It might have been The Power of Habit. About cookies and radishes. And basically the study took brought a bunch of people in the room, told them that they were testing their sense of smell and how different smells affect people. And one of the groups was placed in front of with a bowl of radishes and a bowl of cookies. And they were told, while you're waiting, if you want, you can have any of these. They asked them to sort of smell them, but you can eat whatever you want. And then they said, we need the smells to dissipate, so while you're waiting, here's a little puzzle for you to do. And the puzzle was impossible. It could not be solved. The second group, they had the cookies, one group just had cookies, one group just had radishes. And they said, if you want, you can sort of nibble on the... No, sorry. This is funny how badly I'm mangling this. They were told, just smell them, don't eat them. That's it. So one group had to smell but not eat radishes. The other group had to smell but not eat cookies. And then each was given this impossible puzzle to do, to see if, to work on it for a while. And they found that the group that was given the radishes worked on the puzzle for like 20 minutes. And the group that was told, no, don't eat the cookies, gave up after 10. And they found that they had exhausted their willpower refusing the cookies. Boy, I'm so glad I got that right in the end. So willpower runs out. We can't run our lives on it. It's like trying to keep your cell phone charged all the time. You'd need to recharge it. You can't keep talking on your cell phone after your battery died. But we try to use willpower as the solution to everything. Now, it can be exercised. We can increase it. And we can use it, again, as an initial rocket thrust until we break free of gravity. But all the ideas that we've got, it's about willpower, that people who are successful just have more willpower, simply isn't true. They're just using it more strategically for higher leverage. And they know when to use it, and they have other systems in place for when it runs out. Swinging for the fences means that okay, I'm going to change everything this year. I'm going to change all my habits. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to eat better. I'm going to meditate for an hour a day. I'm going to do yoga for an hour a day. Or if it's business, I'm going to spend 4 hours every day writing. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And we come up with these grand plans. So this is very apropos right now because a lot of people have done this for New Year's resolutions, right? These big things. And when we swing for the fences, we lose out on the compounding effect of small victories. So instead of, I'm going to meditate for an hour a day, which I might keep up for 3 days, I'm going to meditate for 2 minutes a day. You think I could do that? I think I could do that. And in fact, after 2 minutes, I might say, wow, this is kind of feeling good. Let me sit for another minute, another 2. And after doing that for a month or 2, I'm like, wow, I can do that. I have changed my conception of myself. I am now a meditator. Qualitatively, I'm a meditator. Quantitatively, who cares? then I'll go up to 5 minutes and 10 minutes and 20 minutes because now I'm a meditator. I've changed my identity. That's the main compounding effect of small victories. And if we swing for the fences and we don't hit a grand slam, we reinforce our old story. So that's a big theme here, that things that don't work tend to reinforce our old story. What we resist persists. So if we're saying, I'm going to change everything because that's what I want to do, we're actually reinforcing the everything and not the change. One size fits all is, so we look at someone else and say, well, that worked for them, that should work for us. Because what that does, it discounts our own strengths and weaknesses, our own quirks, our own way of being. And contortion to a norm just reinforces the fact that we don't have power, and that however we deviate from that norm is somehow lesser or wrong. So instead of one size fits all, we really want to look at, well, what's going to work for me? How do I, what do I know about myself that I can deploy even if it doesn't seem right? So I don't believe in manipulation. I don't believe in manipulating myself to get things done. So that's a moralistic judgment that I shouldn't have to manipulate myself to get things done. And you know what? In some cases, manipulation of myself is absolutely the best way to go. I actually emailed my editor at Fast Company 2 days ago, and I begged her to be a hard ass with me and to pretend to be disappointed if I didn't submit stories, because she doesn't ask for stories. Like, whenever I publish is great. Search Engine Watch, I have to write a story every 2 weeks. They send me an email, they send me all the specs, I signed a contract, they're really serious. If I don't produce, I'm off the roster. Well, you know what? I have to create in my own mind the same feeling for Fast Company so that I write for them, because I really value the exposure in Fast Company. It's really a great thing for me, and yet I don't do it. So in that case, despite my moralistic judgments about manipulation, I am absolutely going for it, because I know that that's going to help me get into the groove until the point where I don't need it anymore. So, what are some ways out of the trap if we identified one or multiple of these obstacles as keeping us from the achievements that we want, of the success we want? One is the key is to start where we are. Start where you are, which means reality-based thinking, which means awareness. So rather than dealing with what we think should be happening or dealing with our image of what's happening, our filtered image, we take time to simply look at what really is going on. And the best tool for that is the body. Right? Our brains can fool us, our minds can run in circles and create all sorts of stuff. Our body doesn't lie. It doesn't lie to us, it doesn't lie to anybody else. Sort of checking in with gut. We call intuition gut. We don't call it head. We don't call it gray matter. We call it gut. Our bodies are processing machines that produce really, really simple outputs. And we can pay attention to those to get a sense of what's real for us. Symptoms drive diagnosis. So whatever is going on, that's where we pay attention to figure out where are the highest leverage points. Joseph Campbell, one of my favorite quotes, one of my favorite 7 words in the English language, where you stumble, there lies your treasure. So anything that we're frustrated with is the next step. This is the game, right? When we're playing the game, we take it very seriously. But when we're done, like, when I play games, sometimes I can get very competitive. I can get angry playing ultimate frisbee. I could lose my temper a little bit. I could really care about the score. An hour after the game, or even 5 minutes after the game, when the adrenaline's gone, I'm like, wow, that was fun. I don't care if I lost. I played hard. So this is the game. The game is where we stumble, there lies our treasure. As Tim said earlier, this is about self-development, and it's a way to self-develop with really good feedback, with lots of really good scorekeeping mechanisms. So what we can do then is to proactively create our own crisis, because the problem is it's not a problem, or it's not a big enough problem, or it's not, so you've got to want it. Well, here's the place where you've got to want it. Say, you know what? This is no longer acceptable. And when we proactively create the crisis, then we can then go through the other things. Start where we am. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. Symptoms can then drive our diagnosis. We recognize that this is the opportunity. This is, we turn the pain into gain by invoking this mantra, where you stumble, there lies your treasure. And so here's the wrap-up. Now we're going from top to bottom, as opposed to from bottom to top. Look to nature for ecological inspiration for what you're trying to accomplish. Make sure it's doable. Rewrite your most likely future. If you need know-how, take steps to acquire that know-how. Develop a healthy relationship with time in which scarcity and abundance don't negate each other, but reinforce our respect for time. Redeploy a loyal soldier if we find that that's true for us. Create a new present metaphor by excavating our existing one, bringing it to consciousness, and seeing if it serves us. And then take empowering first steps with awareness. So here's the blatant pitch at the end of this call. This is something that I've become very, very passionate about, very interested in. And as I said, it's largely grown out of two things. It's grown out of my own struggles and treasures, my own stumbles and treasures, things that I have found valuable for myself, that I have worked on, I have resolved, things I am still working on, things I look forward to working on. And my experience working with lots and lots of other people is that simply being the AdWords guy or the online marketing guy is not doing the greatest service that I can do. So this is actually part of a serious rebranding that I've committed to for 2014. The symbol of it for me is that I'm now going by Howard instead of Howie, which is extremely challenging when my corporation is Howie Connect and my main website is Ask Howie. And my email is howiejacobson@gmail and all that stuff. But it's as a symbol, as a potent symbol of keeping it front and center, moving from Howie into a more mature form of myself into Howard. And one of the facets of this is it's informing my business. So I'm offering one-on-one coaching sessions with folks on these topics to help clarify your goals, to identify your personal obstacles, to, I didn't put it in here, but to really assess your current motivational structure. Is it natural motivation? Is it fear-based motivation? Is it unnatural, rah-rah motivation? And to create formulate a creative instigation plan. I think about this as creative instigation. Those are the words that came to me intuitively about what I'm doing and what we're each called upon to do in our own lives. And then to lay out some powerful first steps. I want to thank everybody for showing up. Someone didn't really understand the offer at the end. Great, that's really useful information. If you go to askhowie.com/create, you can sign up for a half-hour creative instigation session where I will coach you on anything that you need coaching on related to the things you're trying to achieve in your business. Specifically, I don't think of myself really as a life coach. I like to tie everything to business, just because it's, it's what I know. It's where I have a lot of experience. So if you feel like, you want to create in 2013 things that you haven't been able to create in the past, and you'd like some assistance, you can sign up for a one-on-one session with me.